There's a camera in your office. The words slipped out of my mouth in a breathy whisper, so soft it barely stirred the silence of the lavish study. My heart slammed against my ribs as I spoke. I stood just behind Mr. Marco Caruso's high-backed leather chair, a silver feather duster in one hand and a spray bottle in the other, the humble tools of my trade at odds with the dangerous secret I'd just uncovered. Mr. Caruso froze, the only sign he'd heard me. To anyone else, he might have appeared simply absorbed in the ledger spread on his mahogany desk. But I was close enough to see the slight pause in the tapping of his fingers and the way his dark eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. In a world less dangerous than ours, I would never dare disturb the boss while he worked, especially not with an unsolicited whisper. But I had seen something I wasn't supposed to, something that could mean life or death. Minutes earlier, I'd been dusting the bookshelves along the wall, performing my nightly cleaning duties in the private office of the man who ruled this estate, and much of the city beyond it. It was late. Most of the household staff had retired after dinner, and Mr. Caruso was in one of his typical late-night work sessions. Only a few of his most trusted men remained on duty, guarding the grounds or patrolling the halls. I was intent on finishing up quickly when a glint of light caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just the reflection of the chandelier on a glossy book spine, but as I tilted my head, the tiny glimmer moved oddly. Curiosity pricked at me. I leaned closer to the shelf, running my dustcloth over the leather-bound volumes. There, wedged subtly between the art of war and crime and punishment, was a pinhole lens no bigger than a shirt button. My stomach dropped. It looked exactly like a hidden camera. A camera pointed toward Mr. Caruso's desk. My mind raced. No one entered this office without the boss's permission, not even the senior guards, unless accompanied by him. The locks were high security. Only a handful of people had keys, myself included, for cleaning when he was present or away. For a camera to be here, someone had breached that trust. Someone on the inside. Betrayal. The very thought made my blood run cold. In Mr. Caruso's world, betrayal was a death sentence. And if I could spot this device, whoever planted it might realize their little secret wasn't so secret anymore. If they were watching right now, I was in danger alongside him. For a moment, I felt paralyzed, my feather duster hovering in midair. My instinct screamed to do something. But what? If I simply removed or broke the camera, the culprit would be alerted. I needed to inform Mr. Caruso quietly, without tipping off whoever might be watching or listening. It was possible there was an audio bug as well. Swallowing hard, I forced myself to continue dusting as if nothing were amiss. With trembling fingers, I shifted a few books just enough to conceal the tiny lens again. My heart pounded so violently I was sure it could be heard. I took a steadying breath and crossed the Persian rug toward the boss's desk. Normally, I moved like a ghost in this house, seen but not heard. Tonight, each step felt like walking on the edge of a blade. One of Mr. Caruso's bodyguards, Nico, stood just outside the door in the hallway. If I startled the boss or made any sudden moves, Nico would storm in, gun drawn. I'd seen how swiftly they dealt with potential threats. I carefully set my duster and spray bottle on a side table and pretended to adjust the arrangement of a decorative vase on the corner of the desk. Leaning in as if inspecting the fresh lilies the housekeeper had placed there this morning, I mustered the courage to speak. My voice was a mere breath. "There's a camera in your office." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The tick of the antique clock on the mantel sounded unnaturally loud in the hush. Mr. Caruso didn't lift his head, but I saw the muscle in his jaw flex. In the reflection of the desk's glossy surface, his eyes flicked up, sharp and cold. Without moving his lips, he replied so quietly I almost didn't catch it. "Where?" My throat was bone dry. I bowed my head slightly, as if focusing on the vase, and murmured, "Behind the books on the third shelf, directly facing your desk." Mr. Caruso nodded ever so slightly. In a calm, cordial tone, the voice he might use to request a minor household service, he said aloud, "Stand up straight and walk to the door, slowly. Ask Nico to bring me the 1990 Latache from the wine cellar." The wine cellar? I realized he was giving me an excuse to leave the room, and to get Nico away as well. He was protecting me, and perhaps trying not to arouse suspicion from any unseen eyes. I smoothed my apron with clammy palms and forced myself to step away from the desk casually. Yes, sir, I said softly. With measured pace, I walked to the door. My fingers found the brass handle and I pulled it open, schooling my face into neutrality. Nico was stationed a few feet away, a towering slab of muscle in a tailored suit. He turned to look at me, eyes immediately scanning for any trouble. I mustered a polite, unbothered tone. Mr. Caruso would like the 1990 Latache from the cellar, I said. Nico raised a brow at the odd request coming from me, but he only grunted in acknowledgement. Right. Watch the door, he instructed me, already moving briskly down the hall. I nodded and slipped back into the office, closing the door gently. My heart hammered as I turned. The office appeared exactly as before, dimly lit, orderly, seemingly tranquil. But I knew an invisible drama was unfolding. Mr. Caruso had risen from his chair. In the quiet, I heard the faint tap of his dress shoes crossing the hardwood floor toward the bookshelf. I stayed by the door, both to guard it, and because my knees felt weak. Peering across the room, I watched him run his fingers lightly along the spines of books exactly where I had. In one swift motion, he plucked out The Art of War. Then another book, and another. My breath caught. The hidden camera was exposed now. I could see the tiny dark lens glinting in the gap. Mr. Caruso reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his phone. The screen's glow lit his face with an eerie calm as he tapped out a message. Then, with a surgeon's precision, he pinched the miniature camera device between his thumb and forefinger, yanking it free. Even from a distance, I saw his jaw tighten. Gently, he set the device on his desk blotter. A second later, he produced a sleek black gadget from a safe concealed behind a wall panel, some kind of signal detector. Moving methodically, Mr. Caruso swept the device around the room. It gave a high-pitched ping near an ornate globe bar in the corner. He reached behind the globe's wooden rim and retrieved a flat little disc with a tiny antenna, a listening bug. His face hardened, and he crushed the bug under his heel without a word. All of this transpired in near silence. I watched with a mix of awe and dread. Awe at his utter control. There was no panic in his movements, only deadly focus. And dread at the implications. Someone had infiltrated this sanctum with both audio and video surveillance. Whoever it was would surely know their devices were discovered now. How would they react? Was an attack imminent? A soft knock broke the tension. Nico was back with the wine. Mr. Caruso had just settled back into the chair behind his desk. The tiny camera now slipped into his pocket. "Come in," he called calmly. I opened the door, taking the bottle from Nico with a steady hand I was far from feeling. "Thank you. I'll serve it," I said. Nico gave me a puzzled look, but shrugged and resumed his post outside. We were alone again. I brought the dusty bottle of Burgundy to the desk. Mr. Caruso had set out 2 crystal glasses. With an elegant motion, ever a man of refinement, even in crisis, he uncorked the bottle and poured a small measure into each glass. "Have a seat," he said quietly, indicating the leather chair opposite his. I obeyed, perching tensely on the edge. My boss slid one glass toward me. "For your nerves," he murmured. Only then did I notice a faint tremor in my own hands. I took a tiny sip. The wine was rich and velvety on my tongue, utterly incongruous with the adrenaline flooding my veins. Mr. Caruso leaned forward, eyes fixed on mine. "Now," he said in a low voice, "tell me everything. How you found it, who's been in here, anything out of the ordinary." I drew a breath, nodding. In a hushed tone, I explained what had happened. How I spotted the lens while dusting, how I realized no one but an insider could have planted it, how I hid it again and came straight to him. I mentioned that I thought a book had been slightly out of place the day before when I cleaned. Something I'd only recalled in hindsight. He listened without interruption, his face a granite mask, but I could sense the simmering anger beneath the surface. When I finished, he sat back considering. The office's warm lamplight cast deep shadows under his brows. "Only a few people have access to this room," he said, voice tight. He began counting on long fingers. Me, of course. My consigliere, Roccofiore. Nico, when he's guarding the door. And you. His gaze held steady on me at that last inclusion. "I would never," I blurted, my chest clenching at the idea that he might suspect me. He held up a hand. "I know," he said simply. "You wouldn't have told me if it were you. Besides," a ghost of a wry smile touched his lips, "you're not the only one who's noticed your professionalism. I pay attention, Ms. Sophia." Despite the fear coursing through me, I felt a small bloom of warmth at that acknowledgement. He'd noticed me, trusted me. I gave a shaky nod. Mr. Caruso's jaw tightened. "That leaves Rocco and possibly Nico." His tone made it clear he found the idea of either man's betrayal almost unthinkable, but the evidence was staring us in the face. "I will find out who did this," he said, each word low and lethal. "But until I do, we must be very careful." I straightened in my chair. "How can I help?" He looked at me, perhaps surprised by my willingness. In his eyes, I saw a spark of respect. "For now, keep this between us. Act normal, and keep your eyes open. People tend to overlook the maid. You might see or hear things I don't." I nodded firmly. "Understood." My mind was already racing over what I knew of Rocco and Nico. Any strange behavior, any telltale signs. Rocco was Mr. Caruso's right-hand man, his most trusted advisor for years. Nico was a blunt instrument, loyal and seemingly straightforward. Could Nico even execute a scheme like this? Unlikely without guidance. My gut instinct pointed toward Rocco, but we needed proof. Mr. Caruso glanced at his phone, where presumably the message he'd sent earlier had borne fruit. "I've alerted a contact to trace any signal from that camera," he said. "But it may be disabled now." He leaned forward. "I'm going to call Rocco and Nico here for a little meeting. We'll see if anyone tips their hand." He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and moved to my side of the desk. Lowering his voice, he said, "Remember, act normal. Let me do the talking." I swallowed. My pulse was still a drumbeat in my throat, but I mustered a steady reply. "Yes, sir." He allowed himself a brief, almost reassuring touch on my shoulder, before he stepped back and pulled out his phone again. I could only catch his side of the conversation. "Rocco, meet me in my office. Now, bring Nico with you." A minute later, a double knock sounded at the door. My heart kicked into high gear. Mr. Caruso nodded to me, so I rose and opened the door. Nico entered first, his large frame tense and eyes sweeping the room. Rocco Fiore followed. Rocco cut an elegant figure as always, slender, early 50s, silver threading his black hair at the temples. He wore a tailored midnight blue suit despite the late hour, and carried himself with composed confidence. Outwardly, he looked every bit the refined consigliere who managed the family's affairs with a cool head. He gave me a polite, perfunctory nod as he passed, one corner of his mouth lifting in a hint of a smile. Perhaps he found it mildly amusing that I was present, sitting with the boss and pouring wine. If that was amusement, it never reached his eyes. "You needed us, Marco?" Rocco addressed Mr. Caruso with familiar ease, taking a seat in front of the desk. Nico hovered uncertainly until Mr. Caruso gestured for him to sit as well. I resumed my own seat quietly off to the side, head slightly bowed. In the dim light, I doubted either man could see the wild hammering of my pulse at my throat. I folded my hands primly in my lap and tried to look like I was simply here to serve drinks. Mr. Caruso lifted his glass and gave a casual swirl. "Thank you for coming so promptly, gentlemen. I won't keep you long. There are indeed a few issues to address." He paused, then added in a relaxed tone, "Regarding tomorrow, I've decided to pay a surprise visit to our friends on the north side tomorrow night." I almost held my breath as I watched the ripple of reaction. Nico sat up a bit straighter, exchanging a quick glance with Rocco. The North Side crew was a smaller outfit that had been skirting the edges of defying Mr. Caruso's organization. A surprise visit could mean many things, none of them friendly. Rocco kept his composure, but I noticed a slight tightening at the corners of his eyes. "You plan to go in person?" he asked carefully. "Is that wise, Marco? Perhaps we should send someone ahead to arrange a proper meeting." Mr. Caruso waved a hand dismissively. "No need. I want to catch them off guard. Remind them we aren't afraid to walk into their backyard. I'll take only a small detail. Keep it low profile. Probably just Nico with me." Nico blinked, then nodded firmly. "Of course, boss. If that's what you want." I could hear a note of pride in his voice at being chosen. Rocco set his untouched wineglass down. "If you insist on going yourself, at least allow me to quietly have our contacts up there scout the situation. I'd feel better knowing you're not walking into any surprises." "Discretion is key," Mr. Caruso agreed. "Go ahead and quietly gather intel, but I don't want anyone tipping them off that I'm coming." Rocco inclined his head. "Certainly, I'll handle it with utmost discretion." As they talked, I I studied both men from beneath my eyelashes. Nico seemed as steady and blunt as ever, hardly the type to mastermind hidden surveillance. His loyalty to Mr. Caruso was practically legendary. I doubted he had the cunning or desire to betray the man who'd lifted him off the streets. Rocco, by contrast, was smooth and affable throughout the meeting, perhaps too affable. He responded to Mr. Caruso's plans with measured nods, and even a light joke at one point that earned a chuckle from the boss. But my mind kept circling back to that tiny camera, and who had the access and brains to place it. Given his unrestricted access to this office and his clever mind, if anyone here could plant that device without raising suspicion, it was Rocco. The discussion drifted to routine matters, ledgers, a delayed shipment, yet my senses stayed honed on the undercurrents. Every time Rocco spoke, I watched for a telltale crack in his polished facade. For a long while, there was nothing. He was good at this, acting the loyal advisor, showing appropriate concern but no undue alarm. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it truly wasn't him. Then it happened. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Caruso reiterated lightly, "So it's settled. Tomorrow night I'll pay the north side a visit. Rocco, keep things running here in my absence." Rocco smiled and lifted his glass as if in salute. "Of course. I'll ensure everything is ready." But as he brought the glass to his lips, I saw it, a faint tremble in his hand. The wine quivered, just for an instant, before he steadied it. He didn't actually drink, I noticed, merely wet his lips and set the glass down. A spike of intuition pierced me. Rocco was nervous. The ever-collected Rocco Fiore had let slip a tremor. Why? The plan for tomorrow should not have unnerved him, unless he already knew something. Unless an ambush truly awaited Mr. Caruso on that visit, one that Rocco himself was orchestrating. My pulse quickened as puzzle pieces clicked together in my mind. The hidden camera, the inside knowledge, a potential setup on the north side. It all pointed to Rocco. I dropped my gaze to hide the fierce light of realization I was sure shone in my eyes. My hands gripped my apron under the table. If I was right, Rocco Fiore was betraying his boss, my boss, and tonight might be our only chance to expose him before whatever he planned for tomorrow came to fruition. Mr. Caruso rose, smoothing his tie. "Thank you both for indulging a late meeting," he said, a cordial dismissal. "We'll reconvene in the morning." Nico downed the last of his wine and stood immediately. Rocco got to his feet more slowly, flashing a courteous smile. "Anytime, Marco. Do try to get some rest." "I will," Mr. Caruso replied. He caught my eye briefly. "Sophia, would you mind tidying up here?" "Certainly, sir." I was already collecting the glasses and the nearly full wine bottle. Nico gave me a polite nod on his way out. Rocco paused by the door, hand on the knob. He glanced back at me. Our eyes met for a second. There was a peculiar look on his face, pleasant, mild, but something in it made a shiver crawl up my spine. Did he suspect that I suspected, or was I imagining things? "Good night, Sophia, and thank you for the wine," Rocco said lightly. "Good night, sir," I replied, lowering my gaze. He left, closing the door behind him. The moment their footsteps faded, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were trembling as I set the wine glasses down. Mr. Caruso crossed the room in 2 strides and flipped a switch on a small device, some kind of white noise emitter to thwart eavesdropping. In the hush of its static, he turned to me. "You noticed it, didn't you?" he murmured. "Rocco," I nodded, keeping my voice low. His hand shook when you mentioned North Side. He's nervous about something. I hesitated, then added, "I also don't think he actually drank any of the wine." A muscle in Mr. Caruso's jaw twitched. "I saw. He's involved, I'm sure of it. Perhaps not alone, but involved." He took a long breath, rage and hurt flickering across his face before being masterfully controlled. He knows the camera is discovered. He may act tonight, try to cover his tracks or worse. My stomach clenched. If Rocco realized I was the one who found the camera, what might he do? I was the loose end now. Mr. Caruso seemed to read my fear. He stepped closer, his voice reassuringly steady. "Sophia, listen to me. From this moment on, you're under my protection. I won't let anything happen to you." A mix of relief and anxiety flooded me. "Thank you, Mr. Caruso." He gave a slight shake of his head. "You saved my life by bringing this to me. I don't forget things like that." He glanced toward the door, then back at me. "Go to your quarters now, but don't stay there. Pack a few essentials. I'll meet you by the back stair in 5 minutes. You'll spend the rest of the night somewhere safe." I realized he intended to hide me away, likely in his own private suite or a secure location, where Rocco or anyone else couldn't reach me. I didn't argue. "All right." Moving quickly, I slipped out of the office and hurried through the quiet corridors to the small room I occupied in the servants' wing. My mind whirled. We had identified the betrayer, but we weren't safe yet. Not until Rocco was unmasked and neutralized. And if he was planning something for tomorrow, he might move sooner since his surveillance was blown. I grabbed a duffel from under my cot and stuffed a change of clothes, my phone, and the little envelope of cash I kept hidden, tips I'd saved over months. My hands shook as I recalled the predatory look in Rocco's eyes at the door. Would he come for me? For the boss? As if in answer, a floorboard creaked in the hallway. My heart jumped. That could be one of the staff, or it could be someone else. I remembered to breathe. Quietly, I unlocked my door and eased it open a crack. The corridor was dim. The only light came from a wall sconce at the far end. Then I heard it. A hushed voice, far too familiar. Rocco's. "Check her room," he whispered sharply. Another set of heavier footsteps accompanied him. I caught a glimpse of a silhouette, one of the night guards, a burly man named Vito, with a knife glinting in hand. Ice flooded my veins. They were here for me. I had to move, now. Slipping fully out of my room, I pressed myself into a shadowed doorway opposite just as Rocco and Vito reached my door. The guard tried the knob softly. When it didn't give, he rammed his shoulder in a sudden, violent motion. Wood splintered. The door swung open, crashing against the wall. I bit back a gasp. In the darkness, Rocco slipped inside my tiny room with the guard, only to find it empty. I heard him curse under his breath. "Find her?" he hissed. Now, adrenaline surged. While they were momentarily occupied, I bolted down the hall toward the back staircase. My soft soles made little sound on the runner, but after only a few steps, Vito's hulking form emerged behind me. "There!" he shouted. I flew down the narrow stairs, panic fueling my limbs. A fifth sound whizzed past my ear, suppressed gunfire. A framed painting on the wall exploded, showering me with glass. Rocco was shooting at me with a silenced pistol. Terror jolted through me. I stumbled off the last stair into the back foyer by the kitchen. A hand snagged the back of my uniform, yanking me violently. I was whirled around and slammed against the wall, knocking a hanging tapestry askew. Vito's broad face loomed out of the shadows, his teeth bared. He swung his knife in a vicious arc toward me. I reacted on pure instinct. My right hand shot into my apron pocket where I'd stashed my small canister of pepper spray earlier. I yanked it free and blasted it directly at Vito's eyes as he came at me. He roared in pain, stumbling back and clawing at his face, the knife clattering to the floor. But Rocco was right behind him. Before I could even gasp for air, Rocco slammed me back against the wall, forearm crushing against my throat. I choked, my feet lifting off the ground under his weight. In the faint light, I saw his face inches from mine, normally so composed, now twisted in rage. "You just couldn't mind your business, could you?" He snarled softly. Gone was the polite, erudite counselor. This was a man enraged and unhinged. I scratched at his arm, desperate for air. Black spots swarmed my vision. My lungs burned. I gurgled, unable to even scream. Rocco's pistol pressed against my ribcage, the metal cold through my uniform. Was he going to shoot me point blank? The thought of dying like this, after everything, ignited a spark of defiance in me. I wasn't going down without a fight. Summoning the last of my strength, I jerked my knee up with all the force I had, driving it between Rocco's legs. He let out an agonized grunt, instinctively loosening his hold. I sucked in a ragged breath. With a surge of desperation, I shoved him off balance. Rocco staggered back, one hand cupping his injury, the other swinging his gun wildly toward me. I ducked as he fired. Thip, the silenced bullet burying in the wall inches above my shoulder. I darted away, adrenaline lending me speed. Rocco's guard Vito was still doubled over, blinded by pepper spray, so I shoved past him and ran. The kitchen was ahead, beyond it, the main foyer and hopefully safety. I barreled through the swinging kitchen door, nearly sliding on the polished tiles. Behind me I heard Rocco cursing, footsteps pounding in pursuit. I burst into the grand foyer just as a figure sprinted in from a side hallway. I skidded, ready to flee the other way, but then I recognized the broad shoulders and black vest, Mr. Caruso. He must have been on his way to meet me and heard the commotion. Relief and fear collided in my chest. "Sophia!" he exclaimed, catching me by the arms as I nearly collided with him. His gray eyes were wide, scanning my face, my disheveled state. I must have looked a fright, hair tumbling from its bun, uniform torn at the collar, a bruise rising on my neck. Behind me, the kitchen door slammed open. Rocco and Vito emerged, weapons drawn. Mr. Caruso's expression transformed in an instant from concern to murderous fury. He pushed me behind him, drawing his own gun in one fluid motion. We stood back to back in the center of the foyer as Rocco and Vito spread out, circling us like wolves. A stained glass skylight cast fractured moonlight over the marble floor, illuminating the deadly standoff. My heart thundered in my chest. 2 guns aimed at us, one at Mr. Caruso's side aimed back. I was unarmed and terrified. But I moved with him, mirroring his steps as he kept me shielded. "Drop it, Rocco," Mr. Caruso called, low and lethal. "This is your one chance to end this peacefully." A cold, bitter laugh echoed from Rocco. He kept his pistol trained on the boss. "My one chance? We're long past that, old friend." His tone dripped with venomous irony on the last words. I edged around Mr. Caruso's side enough to see Rocco's face. There was no trace of the amiable consigliere now, only hatred and desperation. "You were blind, Marco," Rocco spat, eyes wild. "Blinded by your own loyalty and ego. I did what I had to do. I wasn't about to go down with you when the ship sinks. I made my own alliances, the Contis, even the Feds, whatever it took to survive and come out on top." My stomach lurched at his admission. He really had colluded with the rival North Side gang and with law enforcement, all to bring down his boss and benefit himself. Mr. Caruso barked a harsh, mirthless laugh. "You sold me out, you snake?" His voice trembled with fury. "My only mistake was not seeing you for the Judas you are sooner." Rocco's lips peeled in a snarl. His finger tightened on the trigger. I realized with a jolt that he was about to shoot. He'd take his chances in a firefight rather than surrender. Time seemed to slow. I couldn't stand by. Before I fully knew what I was doing, I stepped out from behind Mr. Caruso and grabbed his arm. Using my body, I pushed him a half step aside and put myself between him and Rocco's aim. "No, Sophia!" Mr. Caruso shouted, trying to pull me back, but I was already in place, my arms spread as a human shield. Rocco's eyes widened in astonishment. He hadn't expected I'd risk myself like this. The split second of his hesitation was all it took. From the hallway, another figure lunged into view. Nico. He must have heard the gunfire and shouting. Taking in the scene at a glance, Nico didn't hesitate. He raised his firearm and thwip thwip. 2 silenced bullets hit Vito, who collapsed with a grunt, his knife and gun skittering from his hands. "Traitor!" Nico roared, swiveling his aim to Rocco. Rocco flinched, swinging his gun toward Nico's new position. That distraction was enough for Mr. Caruso. He yanked me down and aside, simultaneously firing his own gun. The crack of the shot was deafening in the cavernous foyer. Rocco staggered with a cry of pain. Mr. Caruso's bullet caught him high in the shoulder. His pistol fell from limp fingers and clattered across the marble. He dropped to his knees, one hand clamped over the bleeding wound at his shoulder. In the silence that followed, the only sound was our collective heavy breathing and the distant drip of shattered glass from a bullet-riddled window. It was over. The betrayer was unmasked and disarmed. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor against a pillar, dizzy with relief and the fading rush of adrenaline. Nico hurried to retrieve Rocco's fallen weapon, training his own on the injured man with a look of pure hatred. Mr. Caruso stalked forward, gun still in hand. Under the colored light of the stained glass skylight, he loomed over Rocco's kneeling form like a dark angel of retribution. Rocco gazed up, blood seeping between his fingers as he clutched his shoulder. Gone was his arrogance. He suddenly looked older, defeated. "Marco," Rocco rasped, blood bubbling on his lips. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." Mr. Caruso knelt and seized Rocco by the collar, hauling him upright to face him. His voice shook with barely restrained fury. "You betrayed me after all these years," he growled. "After everything I did for you." Rocco gave a weak, wet laugh, spitting a bit of blood. His eyes glistened, whether with pain or regret, I couldn't tell. It was never personal," he wheezed. "Just survival." Mr. Caruso's face contorted, torn between anguish and wrath. For a moment, I thought he might strangle Rocco right then and there. But Nico stepped forward, laying a hand on his boss's shoulder. "Boss," Nico said urgently, voice thick. "We have to go." The gunshot, others might have heard. Cops could be on the way. Mr. Caruso's gaze stayed locked on Rocco's for a beat longer. Then he gave a curt nod. With a rough shove, he released his former friend. Rocco slumped to the floor, coughing weakly. Nico was already on his phone, summoning backup to secure Rocco and the fallen guard. Within seconds, 2 more of Mr. Caruso's men burst into the foyer, guns drawn and eyes wide at the scene. Mr. Caruso issued rapid orders. "Take that one to the warehouse on 5th. If he lives, he can answer for himself later. Clean this mess, and get someone to sweep the grounds, quietly." The men nodded, hustling to restrain Rocco and drag Vito's unconscious body away. As they moved to obey, Mr. Caruso turned and rushed to my side. He dropped to one knee next to me, his hands hovering over me as if afraid to discover an injury. "Sophia," he said, breathless. "Are you hurt?" I wiped a shaking hand across my mouth and shook my head. My throat was raw and every muscle ached, but I was alive. "I'm okay," I managed, my voice a rasp. "Just bruises." Talking made me wince. I could already feel the tender swelling on my neck where Rocco had choked me. Mr. Caruso exhaled a breath that was almost a sob, though no tears fell from those steely eyes. Relief and something else shone in them. Something vulnerable I'd never imagined I'd see. He reached out with a trembling hand and oh so gently brushed his fingers along the purpling mark on my throat. His touch was light, reverent, as if he couldn't fathom that I was really okay. "I thought I might lose you," he confessed in a strained whisper. My heart stuttered. The intensity of his words, of his gaze, sent a warmth through me that battled the lingering chill of fear. In all our months of polite distance, I'd never heard Marco Caruso speak with such raw emotion. I mustered a shaky smile. "You almost did. But I'm still here." His hand cupped my cheek, rough thumb stroking once along my cheekbone. I leaned into his palm. The study door had opened at some point. Franco and Tommy were carrying Rocco out, and I realized dimly that any number of his men could see us. But Mr. Caruso didn't seem to care, and neither did I. In that moment, kneeling amid broken glass and chaos, we saw only each other. Behind us, Nico cleared his throat awkwardly. "Boss, Sophia, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we really should move. Others will come investigate the noise. And he's still breathing," he added with a scowl toward Rocco's limp figure now being hauled away. Mr. Caruso blinked, coming back to himself. He lowered his hand from my face, but not before gently tucking a loose strand of my hair behind my ear. Standing, he extended his other hand to me. "Come, we need to get out of here." I allowed him to pull me to my feet. My legs were shaky, but he kept a supportive arm around me. The last I saw of Rocco, he was being dragged out the front door, blood dripping in a trail behind. Vito was similarly gone. The foyer looked like a war zone, spatters of blood on the marble, bullet holes in plaster, shards of glass glittering like deadly confetti. And yet I felt oddly detached from it all. My focus was on the man beside me, and the fact that we were both alive. Mr. Caruso guided me quickly up the sweeping staircase, Nico following close behind as our rear guard. The house was stirring now. Somewhere distant, I heard a panicked voice of a housemaid, and one of the senior guards barking orders to keep everyone in their quarters. Mr. Caruso moved with purpose, choosing back corridors and finally opening a door to a set of rooms I'd never entered before. His private suite. The door shut behind us, snuffing out the distant sounds of cleanup and confusion. In the stillness of his inner sanctum, I suddenly felt the full weight of the night's events. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I realized I was still clutching Mr. Caruso's hand in a death grip. I released it at once, flushing. "I'm sorry," I stammered, stepping back. He glanced down at his own hand, as if only just noticing he'd been holding mine so tightly. "Don't be," he said softly. He looked as exhausted as I felt. His suit rumpled, a smear of someone else's blood, Rocco's on his cuff, and an unreadable mix of grief and anger in his expression. The suite was dimly lit by a single lamp. I recognized the opulence in the furnishings even through my haze. A massive canopied bed, rich Persian rugs, antique mahogany furniture. Yet at that moment, those details barely registered. I swayed on my feet, the adrenaline crash hitting me hard. Mr. Caruso's hands came to rest on my shoulders, steadying me. "Easy," he murmured. "Sit." He guided me to a leather chaise lounge near the fireplace. I sank down gratefully. Nico appeared at the door, speaking in low tones. "The situation's under control. Franco and the others will handle any evidence. If the police are alerted, our contacts will slow them. We've got time." He cleared his throat, adding, "I'll be right outside if you need anything, boss." Mr. Caruso nodded. "Thank you, Nico, and thank you for saving our lives." Nico managed a tight smile. "You'd do the same for me, sir." His gaze flickered to me briefly, equal parts concern and a bit of awe. Then he stepped out, closing the door to give us privacy. A heavy silence settled once we were alone. The adrenaline was ebbing, leaving behind aches and a whirlwind of emotions. I gingerly touched my throat. It felt tender and swollen. Mr. Caruso crouched in front of me, drawing my attention. He produced a clean handkerchief, and without a word, reached up to blot at a spot on my temple. Only then did I realize a thin trickle of blood, likely from flying glass, had run from my hairline. His touch was careful. "Just a scratch," he said almost absently, focused on cleaning the small wound. I found myself studying his face in the lamplight. For the first time, the mask had slipped. Marco Caruso looked human, tired, relieved, angry, and grateful all at once. He had a shallow cut on his cheek, and another on his forearm where a shard of glass or a stray bullet fragment must have grazed him. Without thinking, I reached out and took the handkerchief from him. "You're hurt," I said softly. He glanced down at the tear in his sleeve and dismissed it. "It's nothing." "Let me see." I gently rolled up the fine fabric. A bloody stripe creased the skin of his muscled forearm. It wasn't deep, but I still winced. I tore a clean corner of the handkerchief and dabbed at it, cleaning the wound. He didn't even flinch. When I finished, he caught my hand in his. "Sophia," he began quietly, "you saved my life. Twice in one night, in fact." He shook his head in wonder. "I don't think I can ever repay you." I met his gaze. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Caruso. I just did what anyone would do." A faint, tired smile touched his lips. "Not anyone. There are few people I trust at my back. And now you're one of them." He hesitated, then added, "After all this, you can call me Marco, you know." My heart gave a small, unexpected flutter. "Marco," I repeated softly. It felt intimate on my tongue, far more personal than Mr. Caruso. He'd been a distant figure for so long, my enigmatic employer. Now we were bound by secrets, blood, and a trust forged in danger. He seemed to like the way his name sounded in my voice. His eyes warmed a degree. "That's better." Gently he sat beside me on the chaise. The small space forced our bodies close, hips nearly touching. In the fireplace's low glow, an irresistible pull hung between us. The adrenaline, the relief of survival, the raw emotions. We were two people who had walked through fire together. He lifted a hand and brushed back a loose strand of my hair that had fallen over my eyes. I caught that hand in mine, holding it against my cheek. His knuckles were scraped and bruised. I pressed a light kiss there, a silent thank you for protecting me. Marco inhaled sharply. I looked up to find his storm-gray eyes fixed on me, darkening with a different kind of intensity now. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, with a low, almost pained groan, he closed the small distance between us and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss caught me by surprise with its sheer fervor. His hand slid to the back of my neck, fingers tangling gently in my hair as he deepened the kiss. I melted against him, a soft gasp escaping me at the warmth and insistence of his mouth. It was nothing like any tentative kiss I'd known in my sheltered life. It was hungry, grateful, and full of all the words we didn't know how to say in that moment. I returned his kiss with equal fervor, my free hand clutching the front of his vest to pull him closer. A soft sound, half sigh, half sob, escaped me as waves of emotion crashed over us. In that desperate kiss, we poured everything: fear, relief, gratitude, and a budding affection that had been quietly growing for months without either of us acknowledging it. When we finally drew apart, I was trembling anew, this time not from fear, but from the power of that embrace. Marco rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed as he caught his breath. "Forgive me," he murmured, voice low and gravelly. "That was unprofessional." There was a hint of self-deprecation in his tone, as if he realized how absurd formality sounded now. I gave a weak laugh, touching my fingertips to my tingling lips. "After tonight, I think we're a bit beyond professional, don't you?" He huffed a warm breath of amusement and opened his eyes. The corner of his mouth lifted, a real smile, small but genuine. "I suppose we are." His thumb caressed my cheek. Still, if that was out of line. "It wasn't," I interrupted softly. Meeting his gaze, I felt heat bloom in my face, but I didn't look away. "Believe me, it wasn't." Relief and something like joy flickered over his features. He shifted, pulling me into an embrace against his side. I settled there with a content sigh, my head resting on his shoulder as his arm wrapped around me. For a long moment we just breathed together, hearts still pounding in sync. Marco's chin gently nuzzled the top of my head. "Sophia," he began, a note of seriousness in his voice. "There's something we need to discuss." I tensed slightly, tilting my face up. The firelight danced in his eyes. "It's about what happens now," he said. "After all this." I swallowed, sensing the weight of what he meant. He was a mafia boss who had just eliminated a traitor in his ranks with my help. I was an ordinary woman, a maid, who had stepped far outside the boundaries of a normal life tonight. Where could I possibly fit in his world going forward? Perhaps he intended to send me away for my own safety, or maybe he worried I would want to leave. A pang went through me at that thought. "If you want out, away from this life, I will arrange it," Marco said quietly, surprising me. "New identity, money, whatever it takes. You could be safe, far from all this violence." Though his words were generous, his arm tightened around me, betraying a reluctance. I realized in that instant that leaving was the last thing I wanted. I'd had a glimpse into Marco's world tonight, dark and terrifying as it was. And I'd also seen the fierce, principled man at its center. A man who had risked everything to keep me safe. I couldn't just walk away from that. From him. I placed my hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat. "And if I choose to stay?" I asked softly. His breath caught. "If you stay," he said, voice hushed, "I promise you'll have my protection. My loyalty. I could find a role for you. One that uses those sharp eyes and that keen mind of yours. God knows I could use someone I truly trust." He paused. "But it would mean becoming part of my world, for better or worse. There's no going back to normal after that." For a moment, the gravity of it settled between us. He was right. I had a choice to make that would shape the rest of my life. Walk away and try to pretend none of this happened, or step fully into a world of danger, moral compromise, and uncertain rewards. A day ago, the choice would have been easy. But a day ago, I hadn't truly known Marco Caruso beyond distant observations. Now, I felt I knew him in the most profound way, and I knew myself. The timid maid who kept her head down was gone. In her place was a woman who had faced death and decided to fight. A woman who found purpose and, yes, belonging at this man's side. I lifted my head and looked him in the eye. "I made my decision back in that restaurant when I warned you," I said softly. "And again when I stood in front of that gun tonight. I'm with you, Marco. I want to stay. With you." The relief that broke across his face was like dawn chasing away a long night. Without a word, he pulled me into another embrace. Gentler, but no less emotional. I felt his lips pressed to my hair in a tender kiss. "You won't regret it," he whispered. "I won't let you." I nodded against his chest. A strange peace had settled over me. Despite all the blood and terror, I felt certain I was exactly where I was meant to be. Marco stood, drawing me up with him. "We both need some rest," he said, brushing a knuckle under my chin. He looked hesitant for the first time. "You can take the bed. I'll stay on the couch or keep watch." "Don't be ridiculous," I cut in, managing a tiny smile. Boldly, I slipped my hand into his. "We can both take the bed. I don't want to be alone." He stared at me, that new soft warmth lighting his eyes, then gave a small nod. Wordlessly, he led me to the king-sized bed draped in burgundy silk linens. We kicked off our shoes and settled atop the covers, too exhausted to even contemplate changing out of our rumpled, blood-stained clothes. As I lay back against the pillows, Marco eased down beside me. After a brief, unsure moment, he carefully drew me into his arms. I curled against him, my head resting on his shoulder and one arm draped across his broad chest. He was solid and warm, the steady rise and fall of his breathing soothing the last frayed edges of my nerves. His hand moved in slow circles over my back. "Try to sleep," he murmured. "I'll be right here. Safe." The word floated through my mind as my eyes grew heavy. I hadn't felt truly safe in a very long time. But in his arms, despite everything, I did. Safe and wanted. Just before sleep claimed me, I felt Marco press a gentle kiss to my forehead. I smiled in the darkness. So much had happened in the space of a single night. Violence, betrayal, truth, and unexpected love. The shy maid who started her shift at dusk was gone. In her place was a woman entwined in the dangerous embrace of a mafia boss. It was a world of shadows I'd stepped into, but I did not step alone. Whatever came next, be it the threat of the FBI Rocco had alerted, or challenges consolidating power after this betrayal, I knew we would face it together. That thought brought me a calm I didn't expect. I drifted off listening to the steady heartbeat of the man beside me. In the morning, new dangers and decisions would await. But for now, wrapped in Marco Caruso's arms, I allowed myself to believe that we had found something precious amid the carnage of this night. Trust, loyalty, and a bond forged in the fires of crisis. It sent a quiet thrill through me, a promise that no matter how dark the world around us, we would stand back to back against it. And as sleep pulled me under, a final thought glowed warm in my chest. I had chosen my place, and it was here, with him, in a morally complex and unbreakable union neither of us had seen coming.